The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
I have a chaver. He once told me a story, and I called him yesterday morning because when I say a story, I have a funny thing. I'm strange in this way. I like to say true stories. I think most speakers do, but some of their stories are true. They just didn't yet happen, right? So I like to say stories that are true that happened. So he once shared this Meisel with me, and before I said it over, I wanted to make sure I had it right. His shver, Mr. Schwartz, in Borough Park, has a butcher shop. And he had a customer, a very straight man, had a customer, comes in, and he makes his order, whatever it is, the flesh, and this and that. And while he's waiting there, he starts to tell him about his son. Tells him, I have a son, he's such a v'labach, he's so wonderful, he's so good. He's already a bit older. He says, very nice. He says, what do you want me to do? He says, no, if you could keep your eyes open, and, for shaduchim, he says, Hetzu. I'm a butcher. Tell me whatever kind of meat you want, I can give you. I can't give you a shidduch. That's not what I do. I give meat. He says, okay, good. Right there. A week and a half later, he has another customer. And the guy starts to tell him about his daughter. He says to him, what do you want me to do? He says, if you know a good bacher, then maybe. He says, I'm a butcher. I'm a butcher. I'm not a shadchan. I don't know boys. I don't know girls. Go talk to a shadchan. I give you some people you could talk to. I don't know anything for you. Gegangen. And he packs him up, sends him out. The fellow leaves. All of a sudden he says, wait a minute. I heard about a bacher a week and a half ago. He goes running outside the store, runs down the street, chops him, and he says, I have a girl. I have a boy for your daughter. He says, yeah, who? He gives him the name. He says, what could you tell me about him? He needs a shidduch. He needs a shidduch. And he's a bacher. And he's Jewish, all Meisels. That's fine. So they found the shadchan and they read it. And it's G'var Nashidach. Now, how did he know, this chaver of mine, how does he know the story? Because his wife went, years later, she didn't know anything about the story because he's a butcher. That's it. Years later, his wife went to visit her mother. And she sees her sitting there in the house with a nice, beautiful piece of jewelry. She says to her, Ma, gorgeous piece of jewelry. When did you get this? She says, well, I got it for Shadchanis. She said, you got it for Shadchanis? He says, yeah. She says, when did you make a shidduch? She says, well, I didn't really. She says, so what's it? She tells her to Ma'isa. And because this couple got married, and for a couple of years they didn't have any children. So they went to speak to the Rav, and they asked him, and he says, did you pay the shadchan? They said, we didn't have a shadchan. We had a butcher. We have a shadchan. He says, well, go give the butcher money. So she said, that's where the jewelry came from. Baruch Hashem, they have a family. But there's no, go make sense of that. Go tell me how that makes sense. Go tell me how that makes it doesn't, we don't have it. You don't have it. What can I tell you? I have a close chaver, and he told me he has a relative, he has a mechutin, who, they're very, very picky. Big balayichas, not pashat. And very careful. It's very, very, very hard to get up the steps, let alone in the door. So, you have to, you bring an idea, you have to bring the Sefer Yichus, it doesn't go down easily. So, he had an idea. He thought it was actually dafka. They had a daughter. He had a very, very nice idea. Very, very chashuv a bacher. But from a more, also quite a, some sort of Yichus. But from a more American type of family. He said, Skeneshaten, let me try. So before he called up the parents, he figured, let me try the sister-in-law. Because she already made it through the door, so she'll know. So he calls up, and she says, my in-laws are never in 100 years going to go for the shidduch. Don't even think about it. I'm okay. It's okay. Fine. I don't want to hear your stories. So he calls up another family member. He calls up a brother. And the brother says, none again. It's not shaykh. Don't even bother. You're wasting your time. My parents are never going to listen. He says, okay, let's try another direction. So he goes to a relative who's older, has a little bit more experience, and maybe they'll pay attention. And he talks to the relative, and she says, look, I hear it's a nice idea. I'm sure he's a good boy. I don't think it's going to be Nageya. My cousins are not going to go for it. They're not going to go for it. It's too American. They're not going to hear the idea. And I don't want to get them upset. I don't want to bring it to them. Just leave it alone. No, 3 times is a charm. If it doesn't go, you say no, right? 3 strikes and you're out. So he finally says, I think it's a good idea, but nish is nish. Fine. Puts it away. 2-3 months later, he hears that there's a shidduch in the works. It's a shidduch in the works. What's the shidduch? This shidduch that he had this idea. This idea, mamash. How does he hear about it? Because he gets a call from this girl's father, who starts asking him. So he says, listen. He tells the father, listen, I had this idea. I had this idea 3 months ago. But I was told that it's not going to work because there's a little American. He says, really? It's not what I'm hearing. He says, oh, okay, fine, great, wonderful. He says, yeah, and maybe he brings up another objection that had been brought up. He says, nah, we're not makbid on that. Brings up a third one. And if he figures, let me just get them all out of the way. Everything he says, it's kaloi haya. Doesn't want to hear anything. He doesn't know what you're talking about. Doesn't hear anything. The whole story it's not being toifus. And it's a Gemara Shidduch. They got engaged and they got married. Every single expert, all the close relatives, and everybody who's supposed to know said there's no way, it's never going to happen. And Al Piteva, it couldn't happen because why? I have no idea. I have no idea how that works. But one thing I know is that the minute we think we're in control, we're getting silly. I took a trip this past week. I had to fly to LA for a day. It was a very, very difficult, grueling day. I flew in the night before, I flew out the next night. So I had one little nechama that I had. I said to myself, here, I'm going through the winter. It's a little too cold, It's a funny thing. Your beard gets whiter, your bones get colder. I don't know how it works, but that's how it works by me. Mitamol. So I said to myself, okay, if I have one little nechama, I've gone to LA many, many, many times, and it's always beautiful. The weather's always gorgeous. The weather's always, it's geschmack over there. So at least in the middle of winter, so I'll have to schlep, I'll have to fly, I'll have to come, go. At least it's going to be beautiful. And on the way, I'm listening to a shir. And the fellow is saying a whole thing about if a person's supposed to have Yisurim, he's going to have those Yisurim. Samach neshtois, you can't escape them. And he gave Sholem to prove it, to have Yisurim. I land in LA, and it's raining. The next day, it's raining. And it's raining, and it's raining, and it's raining, and it's pouring rain the entire time. And I finally came to my last meeting at night before I run to the airport. And I said to the Balabais, I said, I don't understand. I mean, I've been here so many times. He says, never, ever rains. He said, I don't remember it raining like this in 15, 20 years. That's what they're saying on the paper. There's never rained like this in 20 years. I wasn't supposed to have a warm day. So it doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter where I run. I'm not getting that warm day. If I go to LA and the Russian has to make it marble, I'll make it marble. It's not going to change. You're going to be what you're going to be. It's going to happen. So that I think more than anything, I think it's important to realize that the first thing that has to change is the hashkafa. I think that's the most important thing. I'm going to talk practically in a minute. But to me, the most important thing that has to change is the hashkafa. And that is, it's like you're sitting on a plane. You're sitting on an airplane and there's turbulence. What do? You run to the front and grab the controls and tell the pilot, get out of my way, I'm going to go fix this? You're not the pilot. Not the pilot. Well, why would you think that there's something you can do? There's turbulence, but there's a pilot. And you know there's a pilot. You know he's trained. And you know he knows how to deal with this. And you know he's dealt with it before. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Close your eyes. Deal with it. Shidduchim, as are all Yisurim in life, they're turbulence. That's all they are. They're turbulence. If you know there's a pilot, if you know there's somebody at the controls who's done it before, who does it well, who's always done it, who takes care, sit back. Relax. Enjoy the flight.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org